Some words that sound innocent, and in fact, in some cases are innocent, can have double meanings. And if you don't know this, it could leave you embarrassed, shocked, or even in a very awkward position. So in this lesson, I'm going to teach you a list of words and expressions that you may want to be careful when using in the UK. Now, all of these examples that I'm about to talk about have come from real mistakes I've heard in the classroom. And if they'd used them on the streets of the UK in real life, well, it could have caused a very embarrassing situation. Now, I normally don't talk about things like this, and I'm going to be very embarrassed doing it, but my job as an English teacher is to protect you. It's to protect English learners like you. So while I'm going to be embarrassed, this is for you, so that you aren't embarrassed. And plus, this is a safe space to learn these words, which could be taken in a very different way. And like I say, I'm going to find this lesson quite painful. You may just want to watch it for that. But the first one is come. Come can be pretty innocent, and it can be like, come here, go there. But sometimes British people will use the word come as an informal way of talking about orgasms. Now, I will also say that sometimes, even when you use it correctly and it's completely innocent, some British people may just make a joke anyway, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. But the way I once heard this used in the classroom was somebody said, I always come early, which kind of sounded like premature ejaculation. I'm sorry, I'm embarrassed as well, but this is how it sounded. Probably what that student actually meant was to say something like, I always get here early. Was what the student said wrong? Well, no, not really. But naturally, a lot of British people would avoid that because it could open them up to a joke. So just be careful with the word come. And if you want to learn even more about this lesson, there is a free PDF you can download in the description below. And please do remember to like and hype this lesson. It really helps other learners to see it as well. But hello, you wonderful people. Welcome to English Right Now. My name is British English teacher Roy, and I've been a teacher for around 16 years. And over that time, I've heard a lot of what I would possibly say are faux pas, where people use a word that could be taken in two ways. Number two is based on a mistake and not really a double meaning. If you're not feeling well, if you're feeling maybe mentally or physically unwell, you could say, I'm not feeling myself today, or I'm not feeling like myself today. It means that you are not in your usual state. That is completely fine. However, I once had a student in a class say, yesterday I wasn't feeling myself, but today I am feeling myself and I love it. To which I said, no, Carlos, that's not quite how we use it. So what went wrong? Well, feel yourself sounds a bit like that they are touching their private areas. So using words like feel yourself or touch yourself has a distinctly sexual tone behind it. What should he have said instead? Well, possibly I'm feeling more like myself today, or I'm feeling better. Both of those would have avoided any kind of embarrassment. But that one was a mistake that just sounds wrong. Now, I will say that this isn't an exhaustive list. It's actually based on my real life experiences with students. And not just students, because this next one is related to my wife. Puppies. Her dog had puppies. Puppies are baby dogs. My wife really loves baby dogs. And she said, oh my gosh, you have puppies. Can I see your puppies? Can I touch them? To which every British person in the room let out a little laugh. Why? Well, puppies could be a nickname for a woman's breasts. It made people laugh because it sounded like my wife said, oh, your breasts, can I touch them? But what my wife said wasn't wrong, and it was completely innocent, but it just had a double meaning that made her friends laugh. Were they laughing at her? No, not really. It wasn't to humiliate her. It was just funny. And they were laughing with her, and she got the joke. I'm gonna talk more about that later on, how to deal with these situations. Other seemingly innocent words that could be both innocent and have a double meaning related to breasts are tit and boobie. Now, a tit is a type of bird, and so is a boobie, but both of them could also be used to talk about a woman's breasts in slang. There is even a bird called the great tit, which even I have to say is quite funny. If you say, oh look, some great tits, it could be taken in two ways. Now, I will also say that puppies is slightly old-fashioned, if I'm totally honest, but some people still remember it, and that's why it made them laugh. But tit and boobie are very much modern words. Like I say, I'm going to spend most of this lesson and then the editing process feeling very embarrassed. But this lesson is very much for you. So if you say, oh wow, I can see some tits, some British people may give a little laugh in the background, and now you will know why. Our first phrasal verb is get off. Now, you could get off the bus, but my student once said, I like to get off on the bus, and that sounds distinctly sexual. Get off can also mean giving or having an orgasm. So the way he's made it sound, to get off on the bus, it sounded like he was on the bus and he was basically having an orgasm. I've also heard students say things like, I like to get off, or the driver helped me get off, both of which were completely innocent, but had a second, more sexual kind of undertone. Bang can mean hit something, but it can also mean have sex. I once heard a student say, I banged someone in the street, which sounded like they had sex in the street, when she wanted to say, I banged into someone in the street. Bone can be part of your body, but it can also be used to mean have sex with somebody, to bone. But this one is slightly old-fashioned, but again, some people may bring it back for comedic effect. Package could be used to refer to men's genitalia. So when a student once said, he gave me his package, it didn't necessarily sound as innocent as they wanted it to sound. They were talking obviously about something arriving in the mail, but it sounded a little bit less innocent. Continuing with that theme of men's genitalia, there are some food words that can be used to refer to that area as well. First up, we have sausage, which could be used to mean penis. Meat could also be used to mean penis. And sometimes we refer to the men's genitalia as meat and two veg. The two veg relate to the testicles. Just a little bonus one, spotted dick is actually a dessert. It is delicious, but the word dick is actually a slightly rude word, which means penis as well. Well, that one, which can create a bit of humour. So if you say, I really enjoy a spotted dick, you might make a British person laugh, even though it is completely innocent and completely correct. One that confused my wife completely is the birds and the bees. If somebody says, I'm going to talk about the birds and the bees, or we need to have a chat with our child about the birds and the bees, they're basically talking about sex and reproduction. So you know you have to have the talk with your child at some point. I am absolutely dreading it when that time comes. My son is currently 8 years old and, well, I'm going to have to talk to him at some point about it. I'm already traumatized by this video. I don't need to be traumatized by the... Oh, anyway, never mind. But anyway, the birds and the bees refers to talking about sex and reproduction. Continuing with animals, and this is one I'm going to really regret talking about, we have dogging. Now, dogs, I absolutely love dogs, but dog as a verb, and especially the word dogging, is quite sexual. I once had a student say, I really enjoy dogging, when he was trying to say that he really enjoyed walking his dog. But dogging refers to having sex in public places, usually in a car park. I'm easy is completely innocent, but it can be taken another way. In fact, taken another way can also be taken another way. We'll talk about that in a moment. But I'm easy could mean I'm not bothered. Do you want to go to the cinema? Yeah, I'm easy. But it can also mean I'm sexually liberal and I'm not very difficult to convince to have sex. In other words, a little bit promiscuous. Now, even British people, when they say something like, yeah, I'm easy, another British person may say something like, yeah, I've heard. And we find it quite funny. But you might want to be careful, and also it will help you to understand the joke if a British person makes it. And take it another way sounds very sexual as well. I'll let you use your imagination. I once had a student say, my friend always turns me on, which I think they were trying to say something more like, they always make me feel more alive and happier when I see them, but turn on means sexually excited. I mean, you could turn on a radio, but that means something very different. But turn on a person, it means get them sexually excited. The opposite of turn on is turn off. If you turn somebody off, they basically get completely uninterested in you. Nuts can mean testicles. I've heard that one go badly wrong. And cheeks can refer to these things, but also the two parts of your bottom. So when are these actually used? Well, they're quite fun to use in daily life. People often use these dirty double meaning words in like kind of banter. It can add humor during casual conversations like, I'm easy. I've heard. You might also see them on social media captions. A suggestive pun could grab attention, so now you're in on the joke, and also you'll see them everywhere in comedy and things like memes. I'm going to tell you how to deal with it if you find yourself accidentally caught out using a word with double meanings. But the thing is, Most British people will want you to be in on the joke. Like with my wife when she said puppies, everybody laughed with her, not at her. There is a distinct difference. And sometimes British people will make a joke using these kind of lighten a situation to add banter and humour to everyday conversations. Another word you may want to be careful of is ride. Ride can mean have sex. It can also mean ride a motorbike or ride a horse. But if you say you ride a person, that has a very sexual feeling about it. You might think that the word bicycle is pretty innocent, but there is a phrase that you might want to be careful of. If you say somebody is a bicycle, it basically means that they are sexually promiscuous, they are easy. There's an old kind of joke that, oh yeah, that person is the village bike. Everybody's had a ride, again using that word ride. Coming down could mean coming down the stairs, but if you say, I'm coming down right now, it's not really sexual, but it sounds like you are leaving the effects of something like drugs. So you've taken drugs, you had the high, and now you're on the after bit. You are coming down, so you might want to be careful how you use that one. And when I say be careful, obviously in social situations, you can be a bit more liberal and make jokes, but I would avoid in places like professional environments, serious conversations, or with strangers, because unless you know the person's sense of humour, well, it may just come across offensive. Cock is the shortened form of cockerel, which is the word we use for a male chicken, but cock is also the same as dick. In other words, it means penis. And it is also rude to use it like that. So once I was showing my students a video, there was a cockerel on the screen, and one of the students went, "Oh, that's a big cock," and I nearly choked on my cup of tea. So just be careful. Now, this lesson isn't talking about pronunciation. There is a whole different lesson we can talk about that. This lesson is all about British slang and British culture. But if you want to learn even more about British pronunciation, especially in a modern British RP accent, slang and idioms, British culture, and so much more, we're now offering something we've never offered before. We are offering monthly subscription to all of my courses. 3 huge courses with hours upon hours of lessons talking about pronunciation, sounds, connected speech, stress and intonation patterns of a modern British RP accent. There's also the 250 most important British idioms and the 250 most important British slang expressions, and also an entire course to talk about British culture, why British people do what they do and why we do it that way. It will help you to understand life in the UK. And on top of that, there's also weekly live sessions. There's an hour a week conversation club with people from all over the world. And yes, I'm there as well because I love a chat. There's also a weekly feedback session with me on Zoom where I will answer your questions. You can learn so much more about it in the link down below. It's called members.englishrightnow.co.uk. I look forward to seeing you there. And I will say at the moment, for the first 100 people, there is an extra special discount that you will get for life. As long as you continue with me, that price will never change. That's for the first 100 people. Well, it was the first 100. We've had quite a few people joining since we announced this. Going down is another expression you might want to be careful with because it can mean oral sex, to give oral sex. Enough said. Wood is a kind of old word to mean erection. Hard also can mean erection. When a male is sexually excited, they are hard. When a female is excited, they are wet. So be careful, you could open yourself up to a joke if you're in the rain and you say, "Oh, I'm really wet." A British person might just reply something like, "It's hardly the time," and hope that you get the joke. We're going to talk about how to deal with that in a moment. Another word for testicles are balls, and the word blow can have a very sexual meaning in slang. Now, you could blow out candles, or it could also mean something quite sexual. Now, a screw can be a small metal object that you screw into the wall. So you maybe want to attach a shelf to the wall. You need to screw something into the wall. As a verb, we commonly say screw this in or screw this to the wall. And as a noun, it can mean the metal object, the screw. But screw in slang can also mean have sex. Sleep with often surprises learners. So a child may sleep with their teddy bear. That's completely innocent. But if you say, he slept with his colleague, well, it sounds like they had sex. There are also some that are more innocent in the US and not so innocent in the UK. First up, we have fanny, which is a kind of older American word for your bottom. They still use the word fanny pack to mean bum bag, but in the UK, fanny often refers to a woman's vagina. There are moments through this I really regret making this video. Randy can be a person's name in the US, but in the UK, it can mean sexually excited. Bummed in the US means like kind of sad, a bit disappointed. Maybe the same way we'd use gutted, but bummed in the UK, again, has a sexual meaning. If you say somebody's got spunk in the US, it's like they've got kind of real vigor, real passion, real kind of energy to them. Whereas spunk in the UK sometimes is used in slang to mean semen. And cheap thrills is something I've heard some Americans use, whereas in the UK, it really does sound. I mean, it's not really a phrase we use, but if you say, I love cheap thrills, it kind of sounds a bit sexual to me. And as a kind of bonus at this moment, I'll say quite often when British people hear something that could be taken in two ways, they may just say, oh, that's what she said, or that's what he said. So if you say something like, I could go all night, a British person might say, yeah, that's what she said. Go all night could have that second meaning that is very sexual. Size matters could refer to a lot of different things, but it's often understood as a joke about male anatomy. Fancy could mean quite exquisite, it's a fancy restaurant. Fancy could also mean desire, like I fancy a burger or I fancy a pint of beer. But fancy could also mean I'm attracted to you. I fancy you could mean I'm attracted to you. Not necessarily a sexual undertone, but definitely romantic. Definitely wanting a date. Pull could mean like that, the opposite of push, but pull can also mean successfully attract someone and kiss or go home with them. If you pull someone, you basically end up with them. And one that really surprises students is get lucky. A student once said to me, I got lucky last night. I giggled and then said, get lucky often implies a sexual encounter, to get lucky. And a few more things that could be taken another way I've heard in the classroom. First up, I need it hard. This particular student was saying that they needed things that were more difficult, but without context, this sounds very sexual. The word hard has quite a few different meanings, and a couple of those could be taken different ways in sexual. One of them, as I said earlier, was erection. This one is a little bit different. I'm not going to go into details. Can you make it bigger? Is perfectly innocent in many situations, but yeah, it's also easily the basis for a joke. A student once couldn't open the window and they said, I can't get it up, which what they probably should have said is, I can't get the window up or I can't open it. This is one of the most famous sexual double meanings in English. I can't get it up sounds like I can't get an erection. And it, by the way, is quite a dangerous word in certain sentences. I've heard people saying, I was playing with it all night, which would have been better to say, I was working on it all night. I spent all night doing it, which is a different form of it. Perfect grammatically, potentially hilarious. Context matters enormously. I always say context is key. I still need to make a t-shirt. Another student said, I enjoyed doing it by myself at night. That probably would have been better to say, I prefer working on my own. And finally, a student said, I love playing with balls. Again, balls refers to testicles, but they were trying to say they love ball games, which are games played with a ball, like football. Now, before I say how to get around these situations, if you are caught out, I will say British people love innuendo. Sometimes the sentence isn't sexual at all, but the humour comes from pretending it is. Things like, it's a bit hard, it won't fit, it's too big, I can't get it in. These are completely innocent sentences, but in Britain, somebody will inevitably grin and say something like, oh, behave, or, hey, that's what she said. As I've said before, most of the time, British people aren't trying to attack you, they aren't trying to humiliate you. They're actually genuinely finding it funny and they want you to be in on the joke. So how do you deal with it if it's unexpected? Because it really can catch you out. Well, first of all, like I say, this is a safe space. Hopefully a lot of people enjoy this lesson and they enjoy seeing my pained expressions as I say things. I'm not going to do any more. But if you do find yourself in a situation and you hear a British person laugh, you may want to say, oh, did I say something wrong? And they will probably explain to you what you said, unless they find it really embarrassing as well. But that's what happened with my wife. Everybody laughed. She said, oh, did I say something wrong? And then somebody explained that puppies could mean breasts. And by the way, people do accidentally say things all the time that could be taken in an inappropriate way. And my advice to you is, once you learn the meaning, you could say something like, oh, well, that's one I'll never say again, or, right, that's a moment for the diary. In other words, what you should do is if you accidentally say something that has a double meaning and it makes somebody laugh and you feel a little bit embarrassed, make a joke of it. Show that it hasn't affected you. Show that it hasn't embarrassed you. Make light of the situation and show that you're cool with it. I will say that I have made so many of these in Portuguese when I'm speaking in my second language. Brazilians also find it quite funny when I accidentally say something incredibly sexual. I'm going to talk about my faux pas right now, just to make you feel a little bit better. Excited in British English usually means really happy, elated. I mean, it can, yes, have that kind of sexual double meaning, but we often don't go there. But in Portuguese, the word excited in Portuguese has a distinctly sexual feel about it. It means sexually aroused, sexually excited. When I met my now wife's grandparents, I literally told them, I am really excited to meet you. However, I said it in Portuguese, and effectively, to her grandparents, I said, I am really sexually aroused to meet you. Yes, everybody laughed. Then my wife explained it, and I laughed. It's hilarious. I did something completely innocent. They let me in on the joke, and they found it funny as well. They didn't take it in a bad way. So remember, these things happen. And please do remember to like and hype this lesson and enjoy the pain that it took to make this video. And I can only imagine right now, as I'm finishing, how much I'm going to cringe during the editing process. But please do remember to like and hype it. And thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next lesson.